Bueno, buenas tardes. Les doy la bienvenida a esta sesión sincrónica en la que estaremos pues, dando cumplimiento con nuestro cronograma con respecto a las actividades programadas para el módulo número 1 de nuestro curso. Esperaremos 2 minutos exactamente para quizás lograr que se conecten otras personas y ya pues estaremos dando inicio a nuestra sesión. Entonces ya vuelvo con ustedes. Bueno, ya estoy de nuevo entonces con ustedes. Antes de dar inicio a la sesión, quiero recordarles, pues para que vean posteriormente que en caso de no poderse conectar de forma sincrónica con estas sesiones, ustedes podrán verlas más adelante a través del mismo canal como tal. Entonces, pues no es algo que nos tenga que afectar negativamente. Como les decía, en esta sesión vamos a estar abordando dos de los temas principales del módulo 1. La idea es que pues hagamos una revisión complementaria a lo que va a ser todo su trabajo, todo su estudio del material. Dar un poco más de contexto para que pues las actividades que se van a hacer al cabo de la semana pues se puedan desarrollar de la mejor forma. Entonces para esto voy a compartir mi pantalla para que podamos pues ponernos en contacto por ese medio. Listo, entonces, como les decía, entre los temas importantes que vamos a estar abordando en esta sesión, que corresponde al módulo 1, tenemos en esencia estos dos temas, comparatives and superlatives. Vamos a hacer énfasis puntualmente en estos temas. So let's start by talking about comparatives. When we talk about comparatives, we are talking, of course, about comparing, to make comparisons between or among different elements. So we use the comparative form of an adjective and then to compare two people, places, or things. So I have one example here. Bucaramanga is hotter than Bogota. So we are comparing two different cities, Bucaramanga and Bogota. And we are comparing that city regarding this aspect, which is the temperature, right? The temperature we may have in those cities. So this is one example, as you guys can see here. So there are several rules when we are comparing the like two different elements. So the first rule here, when we talk about one syllable, adjectives that have just one syllable, we have to add er to the adjective. So for example, these two adjectives. Do not forget that adjectives are those words that we use to describe something. Son palabras que se utilizan para describir algo, para determinar algo. Like, for example, nice. If we translate nice into Spanish, we would have something like bueno, lindo, ¿cierto? Nice, agradable. And the other example we have here is small. Small means basically pequeño, right? So we have these two adjectives. And if we want to compare two different things, we have to add er to that adjective. So for example, nice becomes nicer. If nice is, let's say nice is bonito, for example, or agradable, right? So nicer would be más agradable. This er here is similar to más in Spanish. That's pretty much the use. And we have the other example, which is small. And when we make it, we transform it into smaller, that means pequeño, and smaller means más pequeño. So we have this example. Bogotá is nicer than Medellín, for example. Bogotá es más agradable que Medellín. Or Medellín is nicer than Bogotá. So we have like those two different possibilities right here. Okay, so there are also some other rules. So far, basically what we have so far is very simple, right? Let me open here a document. So let's say what we have here is very simple, because the only thing that we have to do, as we were able to see, was just to add this ER. Este ER es lo que nosotros llamaríamos en español un sufijo, ¿no? Es una partícula que se pone al final de un adjetivo para cambiar el significado. So, like in this case, ¿cierto? Nice, nicer, small, smaller. Es equivalente al más en español. However, there are some exceptions. There are some situations where it gets a little bit more complicated. So, for example, in the case of big, if a one-syllable adjective ends in a vowel letter followed by a consonant letter, the consonant letter is doubled. ¿Qué queremos decir? Que si un adjetivo que es de una sola sílaba, como big, termina en una vocal seguida de una consonante, esa última consonante se duplica. So this is the case of big, ¿cierto? Es de una sola sílaba y termina en una vocal que precede a una consonante. Termina en vocal consonante. Por esa razón, el cambio que se hace es duplicar la última consonante y ahí sí poner el sufijo er. So big becomes bigger. If an adjective ends in e, just add the r. Puede pasar también que el adjetivo termine en e. Y si termina en e, no vamos a agregar otra e y la r, sino que simplemente agregamos la r, which is the case of wide. Wide significa amplio, ancho. So wider más amplio, right? So these are two exceptions we may have so far. Okay, if an adjective ends in a consonant followed by y is replaced by I when adding er. Hay un tercer caso. Si ese adjetivo termina en y, nosotros lo cambiamos la y por una i latina y agregamos ahí sí el sufijo. So dry becomes drier. Melgar is drier than Bucaramanga, for example. So, hasta acá tenemos las reglas de adjetivos de una sola sílaba, ¿cierto? En el primer caso, agregar simplemente er, ¿cierto? Excepción es que termine en vocal consonante, en ese caso duplicamos la consonante y ahí sí agregamos er. O que termine en vocal, en que termine en e, entonces agregamos simplemente la r. Adicionalmente dijimos que si el adjetivo termina en y, esa y se sustituye por una i latina y ahí sí agregamos el sufijo er. So those are the examples we have so far. We may also have like a different situation where the adjective is not just one syllable but two. But in general terms, the rule somehow applies. So two-syllable adjectives which end in y usually form the comparative by adding er and changing the y for an I. Entonces, si termina este adjetivo de dos sílabas en y, normalmente hacemos algo muy parecido a lo que decíamos previamente, que es simplemente sustituir esta y por la i latina y ahí agregamos er. That's the first case regarding two-syllable adjectives. However, this is the most important exception so far. If this adjective has two syllables or more, in that case, we don't use the suffix er. Instead of that, we use the word more. Listo, puede pasar que esos adjetivos, digamos, sean más largos. Y si son más largos, no agregaríamos er, como en los casos anteriores, sino que agregamos esta partícula more. Esto es más parecido al español. Para nosotros suena más familiar. For example, boring means aburridor. More boring, más aburridor. Dangerous, peligroso. More dangerous, más peligroso. For example, in this case, Villa de Leyva is more boring than Medellín. Villa de Leyva es más aburrido o más aburridor que Medellín. So these are like basically the two most important, like say, situations we may have here. So I'd like to know perhaps if you guys have any questions. So Paula or Juan, if you have questions, you can let me know, okay? Do you guys have any sort of doubt or question, you know, so we can perhaps clarify it somehow. Hasta acá, pues, si tienen algún tipo de duda, recuerden lo que estábamos diciendo. Los comparativos los utilizamos para comparar dos elementos entre sí, ¿cierto? Y que esos elementos se comparan en función de una característica, como el primer ejemplo. For example, Bucaramanga is hotter than Bogotá, es más caliente que, ¿cierto? Y en este caso, nosotros, dependiendo de las características del adjetivo, agregamos normalmente un sufijo, ¿cierto? Ese sufijo es er, pero vimos que solo lo podemos hacer en los casos en los que este adjetivo tiene dos sílabas o menos, de hecho. Y en esos casos lo utilizaremos. Si tiene más, utilizamos la expresión more. So that is what we have so far. Okay, so however, the whole situation is a little bit more complicated, as you will see, because there are some adjectives which are irregular. So these are some very good examples about that. So so far we said that you have like two different. One of them is to use the suffix er as if it was a case of nice, for instance. So nicer. That was the alternative number one, let's say. And the other one, what's if the adjective is longer, like 2 syllables or more, you use the expression more in that case. However, as I said previously, there are some exceptions. And these are 3 examples of those exceptions. These adjectives are called irregular because they don't follow those rules. They follow like a completely different rule, let's say. And that rule is that there is no rule, basically. So in terms of this, we should somehow like memorize the comparative forms for each adjective. So in the case of good means bueno. Para decir bueno, el comparativo sería mejor, ¿cierto? Y para hacer este comparativo utilizamos una palabra totalmente diferente. Son irregulares entonces porque no siguen las reglas que acabamos de decir. So for example, good becomes better. Better es mejor. Bad, malo, becomes worse, que significa más malo. And far, que significa lejos, se convierte en farther or further, que significa más lejos. So those are some exceptions we have so far. So I would like you guys to work on this exercise. We have 6 different mistakes here. So what I want you to do is to read the text. Please read the whole text very carefully and try to identify 6 mistakes in the text. Perhaps you will find just a couple or just 1 or 2, but that's okay. But I want you to please find some of the mistakes in the text. Okay, so I will give you some time so you guys can find some mistakes here in this text. Let me check if we can do something. Okay, so this is the text, guys. So I don't know if you understand what you guys have to do, Paula and Juan. What I want you to do is just to read the text and find those 6 mistakes I said, okay? So please, I will give you around 5 minutes so you guys can read the text and then we can see if you guys found the mistakes. Do you guys find any mistakes so far? I don't know, perhaps. Do not forget that we have 6 different mistakes, okay? So just in case you haven't done it, I will show the mistakes myself. So here is a text with the 6 mistakes, and now here is a text with the mistakes corrected. So The first mistake was this one. As you can see here in the previous text, let me show it to you. Um, so as you guys can see here we have one mistake here, right? Excuse me. The first mistake in this case, actually, we have the mistake also here as well. In this case, we have to use two G's, right? I'm so sorry. It should be Bogota is bigger, double G. Bogota is bigger than Salento and is more crowded too. On the other hand, Salento is more quieter. That was the mistake, right? As you can see, more quieter. No podríamos decirlo porque estaríamos duplicando esta función de comparativo. Entonces no sería more quieter, sino, right? And more calmer. It was the mistake, right? So we have to say just calmer. In Bogota, you find many things to do and enjoy. There are many cinemas and theaters, and the nightlife is more interesting. As you guys can see here in the text, it said interesting more, so that when we don't do it that way, we have to organize the words in this case. So it should be, as you can see, this is the correct form, more interesting. And the next one, it said, but Salento is comfortabler somehow, right? This adjective is long. It has more than two syllables. So that's why we cannot say comfortabler, but more comfortable, right? More comfortable. That's the way we should say it in that case. And the other mistake was this. It said, the life here is easier, but we know that when the adjective ends in Y, we have to change that Y for I, right? So it's not easier. This is not correct. Should be easier, but just like this, right? So these are some of the mistakes that we can find here in this exercise, right? So guys, I don't know if you have any questions regarding this or if we can, continue. Any questions, Paula or Juan, so far? Okay, guys, so let's continue. So the other topic that we are starting this week for the activities for the next week, the other topic is superlatives. These two topics are strongly connected. They have like a very strong relationship because we use them for like quite similar things. It's like different contexts, different uses, but the way they work is pretty much the same. So in the case of comparatives, what we do is to compare, right? We compare two different elements. But in the case of superlatives, we don't compare just two elements, but what we do is to somehow highlight one element in a group. Okay, so in the case of comparativos, what we do is comparar, right? We compare like different elements. Comparamos dos elementos, por ejemplo, like in the case of cities, like Bogota or Bucaramanga is hotter than Bogota, for example. And in the cases of superlatives, we don't just compare two things. En vez de simplemente comparar dos cosas, lo que hacemos es resaltar o exaltar un elemento dentro de un grupo, right? And the grammar behind it is very similar. Así como en el caso anterior utilizamos un sufijo, que en ese caso era ER, en ese caso también utilizamos un sufijo que es EST. So for example, in the case of old, which means viejo, it becomes oldest. High, which means alto, becomes highest, and so on and so forth. Additionally, do not forget that you have to use this expression always, just like that. We have to use the article. We have to use the in that case. Okay, so I will show you some examples. So in the case of one syllable, it's very easy. We just add the suffix est, right? Very simple, just like we used to do it with in the case of comparatives. But when it comes to two-syllable adjectives, like busy, pretty, it might work exactly the same, but we have to take into account some little details, let's say. So once again, as it happened in the case of the comparatives, where we were using IEST, like I, right? In the case of the adjectives that ended in Y, we do the same here. Correspondencia con las reglas si se dan cuenta. Aquí también, si terminan en Y, son sustituidos por I latina y ahí sí va el sufijo. Es la misma historia, la misma idea, pues, de lo que vimos en el comparativo. And when the adjectives have two syllables or more also, we don't use the suffix, but we use instead the expression most, right? So becomes the most. So famous should be the most famous, and crowded becomes the most crowded. Famous, for example, famoso se convierte en the most famous, el más famoso, no famousest o algo así, no, the famous, the most famous, porque es un adjetivo que tiene más de dos sílabas. Entonces, esa lógica que aplicamos en el caso de los comparativos la aplicamos de nuevo acá. Tenemos que ponerle mucho cuidado al número de sílabas que tiene y cómo termina el adjetivo para saber qué regla aplica. Also, it happens as well in the case of adjectives that have three syllables or more. In that case, we just use most. Important becomes the most important. Interesting becomes the most interesting. So that is pretty much how it works. So, okay, guys. So once again, let's try to remember what we have said so far. So we were basically having a look at two different topics, right? Comparatives and superlatives. We said that we use comparatives to compare two elements in terms of one specific adjective. So for example, we were just describing, we were comparing cities. So we selected one characteristic of cities, which was the temperature or weather, and we said, for example, Bucaramanga, excuse me, is hotter than Bogota. We're comparing those two cities. We said as well that when these adjectives have more than two syllables, we have to use, instead of the suffix er, we use the expression more. Entonces hay dos opciones, ¿no? Comparativos para comparar dos elementos utilizando los adjetivos, ¿cierto? Los comparamos en función de cualquier característica. Y lo que tenemos en cuenta después es si el adjetivo tiene menos o más de dos sílabas. Y las reglas se aplican según esto. Eso es algo que ustedes encuentran en su material de estudio. So that is in terms of comparatives. And in the case of superlatives, the rules are somehow the same, but the difference here is that we don't use the suffix er, but instead we use the suffix est, right? This one, as you can find it here, just right here. So we use a different suffix, but still we have to take into account the same rule of the number of syllables. So when we have more than two syllables, we have to use the expression most, right? So that is pretty much how it works. So guys, just to finish, I have these 5 different examples regarding, like 3 of them have to do with systems, with software and stuff like that. And the other 2 are just like generic examples. So what we have to do is to complete the sentences to make superlative expressions, okay? So we have to convert somehow these adjectives. We have to find the superlative forms and complete the sentence. So I just will give you a clue on the first one. It says, who is the blank person in your family, ¿cierto? Y la característica que estamos utilizando para hacer superlativo es tall. Tall significa alto. Entonces, en español la pregunta sería, ¿quién es la persona más alta en tu familia? Right? So how do we do it? So I will give you again around 5 minutes so you guys can check these examples. You guys can check the examples here. Oh my God, why? And we can do the exercise. Okay, so I will give you 5 minutes to do this exercise. Okay, guys, so I want to help you with this exercise. We will answer the exercise together. Okay, so the first one was, who is the tall person in your family? So in this case, what we have to do is to analyze this adjective here, this one. We have to analyze this adjective. As you can see, this adjective has more than two, well, less, excuse me, less than two syllables. So that is why we have to use this form, tallest, ¿cierto? Va con sufijo de superlativo porque es un adjetivo corto, digámoslo. So it is tallest. So the next one, she is the intelligent student in the class. Este adjetivo tiene unas características bien diferentes, tiene más de dos sílabas. So the answer should be different. In that case is most intelligent, right? She's the most intelligent student in the class, for example. ¿Cierto? Aunque la regla que aplicamos es diferente, la intención es la misma, es hacer una función de superlativo, ¿cierto? Exaltar a estos, digamos, elementos dentro de una categoría. The next one is, Linux is the cheap OS available, ¿cierto? Linux es el barato sistema operativo disponible. So the right answer to it should be cheapest, ¿cierto? Es un adjetivo corto y en ese caso por eso podemos utilizar el sufijo est. Number 4 goes, the company has powerful server in the market. In this case, the adjective is powerful, right? So given that this adjective is, let's say, long because it has more than two syllables, we should say the company has the most powerful server in the market. En esta, además, hacía falta también el artículo, ¿cierto? La compañía tiene el servidor más poderoso en el mercado. And the last one goes, Ubuntu has the intuitive Linux interface. Ubuntu tiene la interfaz de Linux intuitiva. In this case, this adjective is also long, has more than two syllables, so we should say Ubuntu has the most intuitive Linux interface. Okay, so that is pretty much how it works. Once again, guys, do not forget that we use superlatives and comparatives for completely different things. They are used in different contexts for different reasons, but still they somehow follow the same rules, right? So basically, we have to highlight two different things. Hay que resaltar dos cosas entonces. Primero, los comparativos sirven para comparar un elemento con otro, punto, ¿cierto? Por ejemplo, como en los ejemplos que dábamos al principio, Bucaramanga es la ciudad más caliente de Bogotá. Para eso sirve un comparativo. Por otro lado, los superlativos nos sirven para comparar dos elementos dentro de un grupo, por así decirlo, ¿cierto? Como nuestros ejemplos al final. She's the most intelligent student in the class. Ella es la estudiante más inteligente de la clase. Entonces, de alguna forma sí hay una comparación, pero no una comparación directa con otro elemento, sino que se está resaltando un elemento dentro de un grupo de cosas, ¿cierto? Del grupo de elementos, digamos. Eso es lo primero a tener en cuenta. Y lo otro a tener en cuenta es que tanto los comparativos como los superlativos se conforman en función del número de sílabas que tengan. Entonces, si el número de sílabas es inferior a 2 sílabas, utilizamos un sistema de sufijos, ¿cierto? En el caso de los comparativos, los sufijos es el sufijo er, ¿cierto? Que va al final de la palabra, de lo que se está haciendo la comparación, como pueden ver acá. Cuando es un adjetivo corto, ¿cierto? Menos de 2, pero que cuando es un adjetivo de más de 2 sílabas, nosotros utilizamos more, ¿cierto? Entonces, menos o más de 2 sílabas, eso lo tenemos en cuenta. Y en el caso de los superlativos pasa exactamente lo mismo. Si tiene menos de 2 o 1, agregamos el sufijo est, ya no es el sufijo er, es un sufijo diferente, est. Pero que si tiene más, utilizamos most, ¿cierto? Entonces, most es el equivalente a more en el caso anterior. Okay, however, like all this information, you guys can check all this information in your material of this module, so you guys can keep on studying yourselves. Do not forget that for this week we have a homework. This homework is to compare two different operating systems. That is something you guys are doing this week. So I would like to know before we finish, I would like to know if you guys have any sort of question, so we can finish the session. So do you guys have questions? Any sort of comment, you want to make? I said, do not forget that you guys can check these topics in the material for the week. And also for the people who arrive a little bit late, in the case of Daniel and Diana, do not worry because you guys have the chance to watch this video again because this video will be uploaded to YouTube. So you guys can just access there and watch the video again from the very beginning. Okay, so don't worry about that. Si ustedes quieren ver el video de nuevo, simplemente lo pueden repetir desde el principio y podrán ver todas las explicaciones de nuevo. Eso no tiene ningún problema. Ok, so, ¿tienen alguna pregunta, alguna duda con respecto a lo que acabamos de explicar? Les decía que todo eso es el material de la semana. Simplemente queremos como hacer una explicación complementaria que les pueda a ustedes ayudar pues con el desarrollo del material, ¿no? So, do you guys have questions? No questions? Okay, guys, so once again, thank you so much for your participation. As I said, I'll be waiting for your answers to the homeworks we have for this week. And I'll see you next week in the next session we will have. Thank you so much.